JB here, JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Tuesday, October 14th, 3:23 on this fine afternoon. Talk quick about the market, some names I'm looking at, go from there. S&P in the green, up over a quarter percent here. Dow's up nearly 1%. Nasdaq is trying to go into the green after a rough morning, right? Looked like the great bubble was bursting. All that chatter out there over the last week and a half finally comes to fruition. Continuation from Friday's sell off. I just all the all the dots were aligned. Everything was aligned, and finally this was it, right? And and the market does what it typically does, buys the dip. I love red to green days. Unfortunately, I wish I was a little better open to it or more apt to positioned. I actually prefer Thursday and Friday red to green days, but anyway, solid session. S&P nearly 1.7% reversal from the lows. And impressive stuff, all in the face of everything that's going on. So hopefully some more chop here today or consolidation, and maybe we can work our way towards that 670 handle on the SPY towards the end of the week. Earlier today, Fed Chair Powell spoke at some economic conference in Philadelphia, reiterating the stance of cutting rates 0.25%, and then talked about halting the runoff of the balance sheet. So I guess all things considered, nothing surprising. And it's funny, you see headlines today. It says, "Oh, markets reversed early morning losses as Fed Chair Powell points to a rate cut," but it's like the market already reversed the losses before he got on and talked. It just makes for good ways to rationalize the move. But anyway, good stuff here today. At some point, right, this circle jerk. I should probably have a day counter, right, similar to the government shutdown, which unfortunately is in week number 14 days now. Hopefully that gets resolved, but I should have some kind of circle jerk, and maybe the official date of the great circle jerk would be, I don't know if it's the Oracle news. So I'll have to figure that out. But at some point it comes to an end. 6 months from now, 12 months. But for now, don't fight the trend, right? People have been fighting the trend, trying to swim upstream for many months and many years, and could be fighting that stream for much longer. So anyways, that's kind of the overall market there. I talked about on the SPY 658, right? And came my candles sometimes they work out. And take a look here again today. Uh, let's see if I can post it in here. That 658 looks like a key support resistance. So it looks like it'll continue to be. So certainly something to watch. And then yields getting destroyed this today, right near those April lows. So all good stuff, right? Let's see. Sorry about that, folks. All right, now quick on some individual names. First, I'll talk about, well, actually small caps too. I mean, look at this reversal. IWM's up 1.75% after opening at 241. It's almost at 250 here today on the IWM. So impressive reversal. All right, so now quick on individual names. First, I'll just talk about NKLR, Terra Innovatum. I don't know how to pronounce it. The nuclear name got those speculatos Friday afternoon. Thank you, J-Rock. It was in the 19s overnight. Then it dipped. It was down at 1750 in the pre-market. And then boom, off to the races this morning. Actually, it was chopping around the 18 handle. So I locked some more of my calls in for over 100%. And then boom, off to the races. So once it started to break into the 20s, I took a couple more off for over 300%. I only have a few runners on those 20 calls. And then I use that to get just some more speculatos on those 25, just in case there's some FOMO, right? And we've seen some crazy moves, especially the last couple of weeks in some of the nuclear names, semi names, AI related names, you name it. So it doesn't take much, especially when it's a low float name, small, I wouldn't call it micro cap, but small cap name. Could it trade 25, 30 by the end of the week? I mean, wouldn't shock me, right? So I don't want to be in a spot where I don't try to take advantage of that. Now that I'm riding free with some profits. So when you got those, I'll continue to hold them. It's sitting here at 20 bucks now. Or actually it's 19.50. Volatile name. So to me, it also, you look around FinTwit and stuff, I don't think there's as many eyeballs on it just yet. Maybe another day like today, people look at the chart, and I don't know if some of it might scare them away that it's up 100% over the last week and a half. Other folks might look at it and say, wow, opportunity. So, all right, so that's NKLR. And then HPQ, right? I mean, it's tough. Some of these names that are not so sexy, HPQ is not a name you look at for, like, it's not a high beta name that volatile that you kind of look at for a name that has huge multi-bag possibilities. But sometimes the best multi-bag possibilities or opportunities come on names that don't have high premiums built into the options, right? Typically, if you look at HPQ daily or weekly move, it's like, it's 1%, 2%. It's not much. So when you have a stock that goes up 4.7% like it is today, the calls, which are not pricing in any type of move whatsoever like that, become serious multi-baggers. So lucky to be in those spec calls last week. Of course, timing could be a little better, I guess you would say. But I mean, those 28s, they looked inexpensive last week. They were still inexpensive Friday, and now paying off. So used the move this morning, and I guess there was an HSBC upgrade this morning. I missed that. I guess they took their price start from like 28.10 to $30. But I used the move close some off some of the spec calls for 100% at the open, a couple more out for 300%, and then I went and got some November strikes because I'm looking at the premiums. I'm like, if it continues to rally, this is gonna those premiums are gonna go bonkers. So got some of those uh, November strikes, the 30 calls, and then I took some of those off for 50% just to cover some of the costs. And I might take some off at the near the end of the day, depending. I mean, we got 30 minutes left. I don't think there'll be a double at the end of the day, but I'll take some more off to cover some costs and ride free on those. But I mean, you look at the chart now. I mean, I would say the stars are aligning, similar to what's happened. Let's see here. Sorry, folks. But you have a golden cross, right? That's when the 50-day crosses the 200-day. Typically, that's an extremely bullish setup. It's over its 50 and 200-day moving average just today alone. So that's a nice setup. And then you start looking at support resistance. I'm like, $29 comes tomorrow. You can make the case it's going into the 30s. So not only that, similar to what would happen with a name like NKLR, which doesn't have many eyes on it. You look at HPQ and people start connecting the dots here too, saying, oh my gosh, here's a name in the space that it should be trading at much higher, well, in regards to the rest of the space rallying, and it hasn't moved so much. Maybe it's going to have a kind of a catch-up play. So nice to be able to lock those HPQ calls in, make some profits. I'll continue to hold those. I have to check the earnings day too. I don't know if those November strikes, I would assume they encompass earnings. All right, so that's that. And then SERV Robotics, which was just over $17 just a little while ago. Again, I talked about this morning in the last couple of days. It's gonna be a bumpy ride on its way into the mid to high 20s. And so, I mean, that's where, in my opinion, I think it's headed in the short term. So in lieu of trying and time some of these moves, I'm just going to continue to hold the calls that I have. Still looking to lock some of the March strikes in for 100%. They're up to 60, 70% now. What are those now? I didn't even see what they are. 95. So those March, I don't have those. It'd be interesting if the market makers add strikes past 40, but they're $1.15 by $1.35. So I got to wait till they get up to a buck 80 or so. So I'll continue to hold those. But story here on SERV, I continue to post this short interest. Just remarkable to see. I mean, here's a name. It's like I guess biotech names, there's a lot that can go wrong with phase 3 studies and what have you. But what else what can go wrong with SERV, right? I mean, just competitive concerns. And I was trying to do some research over the weekend to see what other companies have robots. I know SERV is not the only one doing this, so maybe I'm missing something there. But at some point, I'll look at that stuff. But $17 here today. Once it gets over $18, I might start trading some spec lottos on SERV into the end of the week if it happens this week. All right, so that's SERV. Other names here: JOBY over $18. I talked about the ascending channel here, and actually it's right at highs here. I was actually looking to get some of the November 25s, maybe into the end of the day. Monster move here, and you start looking, maybe it's into the 20s before the end of the week. So like the JOBY setup here. Arista Networks, right? I was posting that this morning. Frustrating, right? I'm sitting there staring at the 144 puts. I think they were 40 cents yesterday after that news hit, and I couldn't get fills. And then sure enough, those would have been, I was looking before, they were $6. Went all the way down to 138, bounced, well, actually 136, excuse me. They were more than that. Sitting here at 140. I'm not going to sit here and try and trade this one to the downside either. But like I said, I'm going to have a basket of names that if there's eventually some kind of pull. This morning when there was some weakness, I was looking at the Broadcoms, even with Oracle was down at 291. And then you look at the premiums, and the Broadcom was trading at like 342, and the 305 calls were like, puts were like 80 cents. I'm like, oh, that risk reward's tough unless there's a major pull, right? So that's why it's important to be in before the gap down, the gap down in the morning, right? On an up day, look for some hedge puts if you think that, hey, there's going to be some weakness with the market. That's Arista. Oh, and then Reddit. So, it wouldn't be a week without me trying to get some spec positions on Reddit. It was doing the same kind of thing it did last week. It was just chopping around 202, 201, 202 after bouncing off the morning lows. And then I thought it looked primed to break out. Got those spec lotto calls. They were actually less expensive this week than last week. Got up to 205 and just couldn't break through. And then it's been melting ever since. Found some support at 196. 194 is the low since August, right? So, of course, I'm bullish the name, but at some point you got to look at it and say, is this a potential bear flag setting up on Reddit? Again, I still don't get it, right? I mean, OpenAI just said 800 million active users. I mean, and growing exponentially. So who knows what it is day by day? And to sit there and to try and to figure out how is Reddit not back where it was, or at least the pressure it's come under since the report that wasn't going to be cited in some of the search tools. I just doesn't make sense to me. So, at some point, I always say with some of these names, like Baidu, unfortunately, I was taking that off my trade list for a while because it just didn't make sense to me, and then that took off. So for me, it's like one of these times it's going to break out. I just don't want to be in a spot where I'm not in. So uh, calls are down. I'm not going to sit here and salvage. If at some point maybe I'll look to get some other strikes there. And I think that's it. Tomorrow ASML, right? So I mean, we had the big pull this morning, and you look at ASML, it was like a rock. So I'm like, oh, maybe this thing's gonna ride. The premiums are expensive, so impossible for me to trade how I trade it. So I'll just sit on my hands. Hopefully, a decent report there tomorrow, and they'll come out. I think it's like a Netherlands or Dutch company. Their earnings will be out like 2 a.m. So hopefully that comes out decent, right, in line or better than estimates with a great outlook. Because the issue with the ASML recently, the last couple of quarters, I think they've been down 8% and 6% is because of the outlook, right? So anyway, let's have a great day, folks. I'll be back. Rock and roll.